Welcome to Banyan Books, Branches of Wisdom, celebrating the joy of bright ideas and heartful lifelong learning. Branches of Wisdom is a series of intimate conversations with the world's most influential authors and visionaries. We explore spirituality and the human mind, ecology and culture. Most episodes are recorded with a live audience. You can join our live events and submit questions to your favorite guests. Check out our upcoming schedule at banyan.com. Since 1970, Banyan Books has been a rich oasis at the crossroads of wisdom and philosophy, offering resources for humanity's evolving paths. We're a locally owned, independent bookstore in the heart of Vancouver's Kitsilano neighborhood. Visit us in person or shop online at banyan.com. Please subscribe, follow, like, and leave your reviews for the podcast. And now, enjoy.
Welcome, everybody. My name is Jacob Steele, Events Coordinator for Banyan Books and Sound. Today, Eric Maisel will speak on his new book, Redesign Your Mind, the Breakthrough Program for Real Cognitive Change. Eric Maisel, PhD, is the author of more than 50 books translated into more than 12 languages, including Why Smart People Hurt, Fearless Creating, Mastering Creative Anxiety, and the Gogh Blues. Widely regarded as America's foremost creativity coach, he is a former psychotherapist, active creativity coach, and critical psychology advocate. Dr. Maisel writes the Rethinking Mental Health blog for Psychology Today, lectures nationally and internationally, and provides keynotes for organizations like the International Society for Ethical Psychology and Psychiatry and the American Mental Health Counselors Association. We're honored to have you here with us today. Please welcome Dr. Eric Maisel.
Hi, Jacob. Great to be here. Welcome, everybody. Lovely to have you here today. We're talking about the new book, Redesign Your Mind. As all of you know, Cognitive Behavioral Therapy has looked at the content of your thoughts, the thoughts themselves, and asked you to do something with them, change them, reframe them, block them, substitute other thoughts, etc. But cognitive therapy hasn't really invited you to look at the source of those thoughts and make more fundamental changes. And that's the idea of Redesign Your Mind, the idea of creating a metaphor, the room that is your mind, and inviting you to redesign and redecorate that room so that the source of your thoughts change and therefore your thinking changes. So let me go through the presentation. Got a lot here. I may end up rushing a little bit to fit into our time frame. Got something up here that I don't want. There we go. So where is it that you live? Well, it's Boston or Vancouver or New York or Idaho, but of course it's really in your own mind. That's where we fundamentally live. That's why there's something called the geographic fallacy in recovery work. That is the idea that if you move someplace else, you suddenly will stop drinking or stop taking heroin. But the mere move won't make a change. The geographic move won't make a change because you've brought your same mind with you. For many people, the room that is their mind looks rather like this. Chaotic, messy, difficult to inhabit, place we don't even want to go. So it's our job, our goal, our desire to first of all picture what that room looks like and how we feel when we're there. what our main indwelling style is. Might be sadness that we feel there or anxiety. And then use the art of visualizing to change that room. Sure, all of you know what visualizing means, what the art of visualization means. Let me just refresh our memories. Visualization started as a technique many decades ago in a hospital in Northern California where someone got the idea to invite cancer patients to visualize their healthy cells defeating their cancerous cells. So it started out as a medical application, and now it's used in all sorts of ways where Olympic athletes visualize success or performers visualize an entrance ritual that's going to get them on stage powerfully. We can all visualize. We can all create mental pictures in our mind. And the mental picture we're creating today, and I hope in an ongoing way, is the room that is your mind. And we're going to start redesigning it. You get that this is a metaphor, but I think there's also some reality to this metaphor. I think we feel like there is a room that is our mind. There is a place we go. Descartes pictured it as a stage where our thoughts play themselves out. And that's an interesting visualization, a stage. But I think a room is a more profitable visualization because we can make changes there. An important first change is to install windows in the room that is our mind and get rid of some of that feeling of claustrophobia. Most folks are experiencing their mind as closed. They've been thinking repetitive thoughts forever. Well, one way to deal with those repetitive thoughts and to change that dynamic is to install windows, throw them open, and let a breeze blow through. And don't really have the time in this presentation to slowly invite you to do each of these visualizations, but do hope you'll get the book and go through the visualizations slowly and have the experience of installing windows and letting a breeze in and the other visualizations that we'll go through. A really important change to make to the room that is your mind is to get rid of that bed of nails that you may be standing on or sleeping on currently. And that's the way many minds feel. Prickly, painful, full of self-pestering thoughts. Well, let's get rid of that bed of nails and substitute an easy chair. Simple to do, takes a fraction of a second. Get rid of the bed of nails, insert an easy chair. Everyone is suffering for some version or some percentage or some amount of sadness, despair, difficult times for all of us. The way that translates into the mind room is as dingy walls, as darkness, gray walls. Well, instantly repaint them. Paint them some bright Navajo white or put up some cheerful wallpaper. Again, you can do this in an instant, in a fraction of a second. Just experience your mind room and its darkness. Throw open the windows, repaint, just that quickly. Most of us are under a lot of pressure, all kinds of pressures, work pressures, environmental pressures, political pressures, all sorts of pressures. We believe in a mind-body connection, and we believe that those pressures also produce malaise, produce illness. Those pressures are making us sick. So let's install a safety valve and have the experience of turning that safety valve in the direction, on the on direction, and releasing some of that pressure. Have that experience of that whoosh, like when you open up a pressure cooker, the whoosh of the steam escaping. So let some of that pressure go. Imagine that when you enter the room that is your mind, you turn on the lights, and at the same time, that light switch doubles as a calmness switch, so that you have this new experience of when you enter the room that is your mind, you instantly grow calmer. No long meditations necessary, no anxiety management techniques necessary. Just flip that calmness switch and immediately feel calmer. This slide speaks to the realities of process. If you're a creative person, if you do any kind of work, you know that the work you do involves a certain kind of process that comes with mistakes and messes, difficulties of all sorts. Creative folks especially, they have the hope that the work they're about to do could come with some guarantee that it will turn out well, but the work can't come with that guarantee, because only a percentage of the things we do will turn out excellently. That's the truth of the matter. Only a percentage turns out excellently. And that's what this idea here is to connote. I was in Paris many years ago, and I was at an open air market, and a woman was picking apricots. And the fellow who was selling the produce came up to her and said, Madame, at these prices, you must take the bad apricots with the good apricots. You can't just pick the best apricots. And that's what this slide is to remind us about, that in life, in creating, in process, we must take the bad with the good. You can have all kinds of furniture in your mind room. A particularly useful bit of furniture, piece of furniture, is a chest of drawers. And in that chest of drawers, you might keep your snow globe collection. So what's this about? You all know when you shake up a snow globe, you know how that goes. The snow rises, scatters, and then slowly settles. And you can use that imagery of snow settling to settle yourself. Imagine, let's walk through this again. You enter the room that is your mind for some reason, because you have some thinking to do, or calculating to do, or creating to do. Flip on your calmness switch, go to your easy chair, but maybe you're not easy yet. Maybe you're still a little bit anxious. Well, then you can take out your snow globe and shake it. Give yourself a moment or a minute to settle as the snow settles. It's a very useful visualization, a very useful tactic. Your mind room has a door entering it, and it should also have an exit door. So when you are pestering yourself with repetitive thoughts, thoughts that you no longer want to countenance, you can get out of there. You want to have a way out, just as you want a way into your mind. You want a way out of your mind so that you don't have to perseverate or unproductively obsess about things when you're not wanting to. Those are a few of the basic visualizations that you might want to engage with to redesign your mind. The book has lots more. Not going to cover them here. I think I'll just mention one that's on this list, and that's the mug collection one. This is a favorite of my own. Every morning, literally, not visualizing, but literally, I pick my mug for the day, and it's a city mug of Paris or Berlin or Rome or Prague or New York or San Francisco, to remind myself that I'm in communion with other creatives all over the world, traveling what I call the International Bohemian Highway, that we're in it together. So that sort of visualization, where you visualize a mug collection and you choosing a mug for the day, helps you identify as a creative person and helps you connect with your natural community. So there is a look to your mind room: chairs, dressers, mirrors, what have you, but there's also a feeling to your mind room, what I'm calling your indwelling style, the way you are when you're there. And that style typically needs updating because typically we're not that happy with our indwelling style because we're too anxious or too sad or too angry or too something. One of the changes we may want to make is to become less impulsive when we're there. If we can do that, if we can become less impulsive, we can do a better job of problem solving, doing our creative work, calculating, and everything else we want to do. And one tactic for less impulsiveness is to not accept first answers that arise as you think. If you're thinking about some problem, typically an answer comes up quickly, sort of a repetitive answer, an automatic answer built from our formed personality, just pops right up. And so we grab it for ease. But rather than grabbing it, now we can sit comfortably in our easy chair and pause for a second answer, because that second answer might be the better answer than the first answer. Our indwelling style may be very self-sabotaging. And it's hard to understand why we do this to ourselves. But indigenous literatures, world literatures, all literatures have written about this trickster archetype, this trickster character, often portrayed as an animal, fox or raven, crow. And this is a mean animal. This isn't an animal that just steals a piece of bread from you. This is an animal that poisons the well or steals your wife or does really mean things. And we have this part in us, unfortunately. So one of the ways we can change our indwelling style is to recognize that this is part of us, recognize the extent to which we self-sabotage, and say to our trickster part, no, thank you. Stop it, please. Exorcise it, ban it from our mind room, kick it out, because it's a creature that does us a lot of disservice. One of our styles may be to turn everything into a drama. It's very easy to avoid doing our real work if we turn every small thing into a drama. With that much catastrophizing, we can't get on with what we know we ought to be getting on with. So the visualization here, it's an interesting one, is to visualize a non-magnifying glass, a glass that doesn't magnify, but that is just pure glass and shows you things as they are, without magnifying them. This is a very important change for an awful lot of people, to look at things as they are without blowing them out of all proportion. I think this is an important visualization idea. So as you enter the room that is your mind, the first thing you would want to do, if your indwelling style or experience is that of sadness or despair, is to visualize yourself removing your heavy overcoat. Just right now, just have that feeling in your body of what it's like to take off a heavy overcoat. So imagine entering your room and shedding that overcoat. If you're like me, I'd probably just drop it on the floor. I probably wouldn't even hang it up. Wouldn't bother to hang it up because I want it off of me. And I think you can feel in your body what a difference it would make if each time you went to your mind room, the second you got there, you could get rid of the oppressiveness, the sadness, the heaviness, that maybe is currently bothering you. One of the problems that people experience in their mind room is thinking the same thoughts over and over again, not being able to stop those thoughts. Well, we're changing that by redesigning the room, but those thoughts may recur. And one, I think, very amusing, lighthearted, cheerful tactic is to, when you have a thought that keeps recurring, you just change one word and feel the difference. For instance, if you're a creative person, let's say you keep pestering yourself with the phrase, "I have no talent." Well, change that to, "I have no tomatoes." And you've got to kind of smile and maybe even laugh out loud. By taking charge of your thoughts like that, by changing a word, you completely change the experience. Many people are able to start things and have trouble completing them for all kinds of reasons. One of the major reasons is when the thing is completed, it probably needs to go out into the world. Like if you've written your novel, then it needs to go out into the world. And then you have to face marketplace issues and possibilities of criticism and pushback or rejection or silence. So an awful lot of folks start things and leave them at the 87% complete place or the 92% complete place and don't finish things. And that's their indwelling style, a kind of sense of incompletion in there, where thoughts trail off and projects trail off, and you don't get that sense of creating a body of work over time. Well, a visualization to try is this one, namely visualizing. You can do this in reality too, of course, but it's simple to do it as a visualization, creating a completion checklist for the project you're working on. What might that look like? Well, let's say you're working on a novel. Well, the elements of a novel are characters and plot and setting and dialogue. Easy to name the elements. So you would list those elements, and at a certain point, as you're nearing the end, at that place where you might usually throw over the project and turn to some other shiny object, instead of doing that, you go to your completion checklist and you ask of yourself, what do I think about the characters? Well, I think they're strong. You check it off and be done with that issue. How about the plot? Like the plot, check it off. How about the setting? I don't know if I've captured 17th century Paris well enough yet. Let me do a little work there. And in this way, you would be having a conversation with yourself, moving yourself towards actual completion. I think you see how this works. You can do this as a real checklist. That would be valuable, but you can also do it metaphorically in your mind room. As I work with creative performing artists, one of the major issues is resistance or blockage, not getting to the work. That's probably the major issue that creatives face. Is a day passes and a month passes and a year passes and a decade passes and they haven't gotten to their work. And to my mind, that daily resistance is actually a very thin veneer, not a rock solid wall. It's just a thin veneer of resistance that needs cracking through on a daily basis often. And the visualization is really an auditory, not sure what an auditory visualization is called, an audioization. It's the sound, that sound you hear when you take out a plastic ice cube tray and release the ice cubes. Doesn't work with a metal tray, but it works with a plastic tray. We all know that sound of ice cracking. And you can use that audio representation to remind yourself that you may need to crack through resistance on a daily basis. If you go into your mind room and imagining that you're about to work on your novel and you can't get started, crack that ice. I train creativity coaches to crack an egg, but most folks are squeamish about cracking an egg for no good reason. They don't like to do it. So I've moved from cracking eggs to cracking ice cubes. It's a little more palatable as a visualization. Just the headline that how your mind room looks is important, but how you are there is likewise important. And so in your mind room, in the room that is your mind, you will want to be creating new practices that support your intentions, that support your life purposes. And there are many new practices you might want to institute. The book I did before Redesign Your Mind is called The Power of Daily Practice. You might be interested in that book as a companion book to Redesign Your Mind. In it, I describe the elements of practice and many varieties of practice and challenges to practice. The headline there is, if you don't do things in a regular way, you may not get to them. Whether that's writing your novel or being an activist or moving your career forward or your relationships or anything, if you don't attend to them in a daily way, you may find yourself not attending to them at all, because we have so many things on our to-do list that we are confronted by each day, that by the end of tackling that long to-do list, who has time for their life purposes? The day has gone by just doing errands, so to speak, and we haven't really lived our life. So to counteract that reality that we may not be living our life, we want lots and lots of new practices. One important practice is the practice of courageously speaking your truth to yourself. It's another thing to speak it to the world. That's your option. That's your choice. That may be dangerous. You may not want to do it, but it should at least feel safe for you to tell your truth to yourself. Freud said that all creative blockage was self-censorship, and that's not the whole story, but a sizable proportion of creative blockage is us censoring ourselves. And we want to face that, confront that, counteract that by creating, think of your mind room as having corners. And in one corner, you have this speaker's corner. I'm sure you all know that there is a famous speaker's corner in Hyde Park in London, where for centuries you could say whatever was on your mind without reprisal, without getting arrested. So that's the idea here, to have that kind of speaker's corner where you can say things to yourself without reprisal. A second new practice is the practice of devotion. Many folks feel that they're not disciplined enough in life, but I'll give you Pavarotti's quote. Pavarotti said, people say that I'm disciplined, but it's not discipline, it's devotion. And there's a big difference. And there's a difference between devotion and discipline. A lot of folks are not undisciplined, but they're not devoted to something. They haven't given their whole heart, their whole being, their life over to something profoundly important. One way to support that intention of being more devoted is to create your altar. Of course, you can create it for real, but you can create it as a visualization, as a place in your mind room that you go to. That's in maybe the opposite corner from your speaker's corner is your altar. And that altar helps remind you of your life purposes, helps remind you of what's important to you, and helps keep you devoted to those things that matter. Just as most people are not devoted enough most people are not passionate enough. We live in a dispassionate culture. Passion is not really much countenanced. But if you think about all of the words that are synonymous with passion, love, enthusiasm, curiosity, etc., we're talking about that family of words that's absolutely essential for the creative process and for feeling alive. And it's good to remember that passion is not optional. We need it. And it's not a given. We have to rekindle it. That flame goes out. I would imagine that for lots of folks listening, that flame has gone out, that you're not really feeling passionate about anything. We have to rekindle that flame. I think one interesting way to rekindle that flame is to remember what we loved when we were 5 or 6 or 7 or 8. That experience of sitting in a corner with a book and what books meant to us, or sitting in a darkened theater, what film meant to us, or the songs we loved growing up, what music meant to us. These are all places of potential current passion for you. Many people are not so sure that they actually like other people, that they like the species even. But we must relate, because it's too cold a life to not relate. If you're a creative person and you think that just creating is enough to keep you going, it historically has been shown that it isn't. Creative folks who do lots of great creating but don't relate suffer from loneliness, depression, all those words. So this visualization is to help remind you to make actual appointments with other human beings. Just as people find it difficult to speak their truth, even to themselves, they find it difficult to be the confident, powerful person they would love to be. And so one visualization that may help with that, a practice to begin, is to imagine putting on your warrior outfit and operating in your mind room while wearing your warrior outfit, sending out emails as a warrior, connecting with other people as a warrior, saying the things you mean to say and that you need to say to other people wearing your warrior outfit. Many people do not actually believe that they or their efforts matter. And they have to convince themselves or tell themselves or remember that they do matter. Personally, I do not believe that there is a purpose to life. I believe that there are multiple life purposes. Each of us has many life purposes, many things important to us. But even though that's true that we have many life purposes, I think we can capture how we want to stand in the world with some simple life purpose pledge that we create, and that reminds us how we mean to operate in life and that we matter. For me, I have a very simple life purpose pledge, which is do the next right thing. And of course, right in that sentence is a complicated word, has lots of meanings for me, but I'm sure you get the idea of what do the next right thing might mean. So if you're agreeing that this makes some sense, you might want to spend some time crafting different possible life purpose pledges and finding the one that's the most resonant, the one that's closest to your deepest intention. And then when you go into your mind room, pledge allegiance to your life purpose statement. And as I say, there are many more practices to institute. If this subject of daily practice or regular practice interests you, I do recommend my book, The Power of Daily Practice. Let's look at some challenges to doing this work, challenges to going in there and redesigning your mind. One is the funny challenge of having trouble imagining at all, trouble visualizing, trouble seeing your mind room. And that's because we are trained to not imagine. That's how we grow up. Stop imagining. Know the facts for the test. Draw inside the lines. Do not be imaginative. Kids can easily do the following thing. You could say, how would you put a salmon and a skyscraper together? And they'll draw you a salmon-shaped skyscraper. Adults balk at that. Adults need salmon in the refrigerator and skyscrapers in downtown Manhattan. They need these things kept separate. And so one of the challenges to doing this mind room work and to doing your creative work, if you're a creative person, is that you've lost touch with imagining. And that you have to reclaim, you can see on this boy's face, reclaim your sense of wonder. What can get in the way of all this work is just being too anxious. Anxiety is a natural feature of our warning system against danger, so it's not something to get rid of. Anxiety is not the enemy. We want that ability to know that we shouldn't get into that elevator with those people because it doesn't feel safe. We want to feel anxious then. The problem is we get too anxious too often. That our apparatus is not calibrated well enough to know one danger from another danger, or what is a danger and what isn't a danger. What this means is it's incumbent upon us, I believe, to own one or two anxiety management tools that really work for us. We don't want to get rid of the anxiety. We can't get rid of the anxiety, but we want to manage anxiety better than we typically do. And there are many things to try to reduce anxiety. I've done a book called Mastering Creative Anxiety, and I think I have 20 categories of anxiety management tools to try. So there will be something that works for you, whether it's a somatic solution or a breathing solution, a cognitive solution, reorienting, reframing, disidentification, many things to try. But it's important that you really do try to cultivate and acquire at least one anxiety management strategy that you know actually works for you. What can get in the way, and this is a huge subject worth another hour or hours, what can get in the way is our original constitution. So I have a picture, a vision of personality as being made up of three parts: original personality, formed personality, and available personality. And in this model, original personality is how we come into the world. And if you've had kids or kittens or puppies, you know that every creature comes into the world already himself or herself. Every creature is different. Psychology pays no attention to this truth. Psychology has nothing to say about original personality. Makes believe we're all come in a blank slate somehow, which is preposterous. But what this means is we may have proclivities, traits that will become lifelong challenges, not disorders. But let's say that we're intelligent and clear-eyed and stubborn and come out of the womb a certain person. We may be guaranteed a background coloration of existential sadness our whole life. As we wonder about, pester ourselves about questions about meaning and life purpose. That may be a lifelong challenge for us by virtue of our original personality, not a mental disorder that we're dealing with that sadness. It's not clinical depression, it's something else. It's part of our constitution. And while it's really hard to think about how to reckon with any of that, we have to reckon with it because we don't want to be self-labeling ourselves with mental disorders when what's going on is that we're feeling the effects of some aspect of original personality. And then, of course, what may get in the way is our formed personality. That is the way we stiffen over time. I think that's supposed to look like concrete blocks and concrete solidifying there. We stiffen over time. It becomes difficult for us to not repeat ourselves, to be different. But in my model, in my vision, we have enough available personality, enough remaining freedom that we can still become the person we hope to be. And that's what, of course, all of this visualizing is about. That's you transforming yourself, changing yourself into the person, into the mind, into the person you want to be. So there will be aspects of original personality and aspects of formed personality that get in the way of all of this, but you have enough available personality to do the work you need to do. And then the very difficult questions of purpose and meaning. I've hinted at my vision of a paradigm shift from the purpose of life to multiple life purposes. I think that shift helps us because suddenly we understand that lots of things are important to us. I also believe that there is an important shift to make from the 1,000-year-old metaphor of seeking meaning to the more contemporary and I think truer idea of making meaning, that we have to stay put and make our own meaning. There's no place to go to find meaning. There's no meaning at the top of a mountain or at some guru's feet or in some book for that matter, but that we have to make meaning. So those challenges of life purpose and meaning are going to make it difficult for us to stay put happily in our mind room, but they are addressable. My book on the subject that most addresses it is a book called Lighting the Way, in which I introduce what I think is a useful contemporary philosophy of life I called Kirism, which speaks to the kinds of matters I've been chatting about with you. So I think we've maybe come to the end of the presentation. My last thought is that you want a bit of a life philosophy for yourself. That life philosophy may be encapsulated by that life purpose statement that you're going to create. And then you want to live aligned with that life philosophy. And aligned means two things. It means thinking thoughts that align, thoughts that serve you. And that, of course, happens by redesigning your mind. If you redesign your mind, you will naturally be thinking thoughts aligned with your life philosophy. And then, of course, taking action, engaging in behaviors aligned with your life philosophy. So that's my parting thought for you, is that you can do this work. It's, I think, charming work, sort of fun work to redesign your mind, and that by redesigning your mind, you'll do a much better job of living aligned with your life philosophy, whatever your life philosophy happens to be. So just to summarize, these are, I think, the goals or the takeaways. You can redesign your mind. You can change how you are in there. Less angry, less anxious, less sad. You can create new practices. You can meet the challenges that will arise. And it would be lovely if you lived aligned with your life philosophy. And now let me turn it back to Jacob.
Thank you so much. That was really profound. So many applicable practices for also showing us like what's available to us, where we feel stuck. Of course, we invite you all to ask questions. You can type them into the Q&A. And let's begin with a question from Sabina. She wrote, thank you, Eric. Do we at any time let others into our mind room, even welcoming them, or when they disturb us, find ways to make them leave in an appropriate manner with strong emotional display?
It's a great question. I haven't thought about that much. And as the question comes up, it seems to me how wonderful that would be. Maybe also kicking people out of the mind room also comes up for me, both of those things. But I think the question asker is onto something here. And I guess the short answer would be, I'm sure that that's possible and valuable. I haven't thought about it much, but I'm going to, because I think it's really an interesting idea.
There's a question from Dan. Do you take private clients?
I do. Come to my site, ericmaisel.com, ERICMAISEL.com. Look under services. I tend to meet with clients monthly, just because I'm too busy to do the weekly kind of meeting. But you'll see different packages there, including a year of coaching, which is a lovely package. So the short answer is yes.
And you do it over Zoom as well, or over?
It's exclusively over Zoom. I mean, we can do the phone too when Zoom crashes, but typically it's over Zoom.
So Joyanne asks, what is the title of your book referring to? What is the title of your book you referred to focused on making meaning? You must have referenced to.
I've done a number of books on that. The most recent one is Lighting the Way, in which I introduce a philosophy of life I called Kierism. Another really good book, especially if you're a creative person, but I think it's great for anybody, is a book called The Van Gogh Blues, which looks at existential depression, meaning, difficulties creatives have in keeping meaning afloat, etc. So if I were to pick two books to identify, it would be Lighting the Way and The Van Gogh Blues.
Thank you. Natalie wrote, how do we figure out our original personality?
Can't be done. Some things we don't know. I think, though, that there's sort of intuitions we have, tingles down the spine, cracks in our form personality that allows us to peer a little bit, but we can't really know, because obviously we're looking at the idea of original personality via our formed personality. That's the problem. So while we can't know it, I think what we can do is not leap to the idea that we're broken or some kind of failure or some kind of miscreant, when in fact what may be going on is some aspect of original personality. That is, I think we can do a better job of letting ourselves off the hook if we're experiencing anxiety or sadness or whatever. And rather than saying, oh, I've got generalized anxiety disorder, or oh, I've got bipolar disorder, or oh, I've got clinical depression, we could have this conversation about, maybe I came into the world with certain sensitivities and proclivities that have given me this lifelong challenge of sadness, or this lifelong challenge of vigilance or anxiety. So while we can't really know, I think it's provocative, and I think we can have useful conversations with ourselves that, to say it again, take us off the hook.
So when you talk about the available personality, it's not that we're trying to like return to our original essence. It's more there's certain possibilities available to us.
The original personality is what's available, our remaining freedom to be the person we currently want to be. That's the way I would say it, not to return anywhere, not to return to original personality, prior life, anything, but it's our opportunity to make ourselves proud and be the person we want to be. And I see it as an amount, actually. I see available personality as a shifting amount that changes depending on how we're living our life. To give a simple example, if I'm an addict and I'm running around town looking for a fix, I don't have that much available personality. I'm just focused obsessively on getting that fix. The second I enter recovery, I have more personality available. That amount is increased somehow. it's still in flux. It's still in flux because we know we can lose that amount. If I fall off the wagon, then it shrinks again. So it's a very dynamic concept. But I do conceptualize it as an amount, and as my vision is of available personality increasing and formed personality shrinking, so to speak.
April writes, can you say more about how to use our available personality to aid in this redesign process and how to deal with the inevitable, quote, failures in trying to change old formed ways of being in the world?
Well, super large question, isn't it? I think I would just circle back around to the relationship between the idea of available personality and the idea of freedom. Freedom is an existential concept, has lots of permutations and combinations to it. But the main headline is that in order for us to be free, we must take personal responsibility for our thoughts, feelings, and actions. So freedom is a call to action. It's not a blessing or something we're handed. It's a responsibility. And so let me say this a little differently. I grew up right after World War II. I was born in 1947. Of course, World War II was the main event in the neighborhood, in our collective unconscious and collective consciousness. And from a very early age, the idea of being a resistance fighter appealed to me. More than appealed to me, struck me as the right identity. And I think you can get the connection between resistance fighting and freedom, that we have to fight for freedom. Certainly relevant in these times to think about that, but we have to fight for freedom. And so in a way, we're fighting to reclaim ourselves. We have to do that hard work, that heavy lifting. And that's why I really believe in daily practice, because it is heavy lifting and hard work. And without the habit of daily practicing, it's super easy to avoid freedom. It's super easy to avoid our responsibilities on a daily basis because there are so many tasks we could be doing or should be doing. And all of that taskness keeps us from being free. So that was a rambling, long-winded answer because there isn't really a center to the answer. But I guess what I would leave as a headline is freedom is responsibility.
I like that image of resistance fighter as a kind of almost a metaphor for spiritual warriorship or going against the stream of our.
Yeah, and I've always thought of couples, good couples that I think are functioning well as couples, as a resistance cell. It's sort of like a subversive unit in society working together for freedom. That not only are they in love and all of that, but they're also a unit standing together because we need support. And so they're two. I have this image from World War II movies of, some French woman and some French man getting the call to blow up a bridge. That couple going out from their cellar and blowing up a bridge or something. That they may be in love, but they're also in a fight. So there's just a little expanded idea from the individual resistance fighter to the couple resistance couple.
And possibly a community, if it could, if it could not get too cultish or something, it could also create.
Community starts to be complicated, doesn't it? We could have a lot to say about the difficulties of community. I think two people can really work together and support each other. Even families maybe can work together and support each other. That's already a stretch. And when you start to get to community, we've stretched to a place where we'd have lots to say about whether that's possible or not.
Interesting. Yeah. And I guess it touches into that earlier question about the potential of collective visualization and perhaps like an ideation or something that a community or a couple can create together. So entering a room together, that potential that somebody runs.
That strikes me as very lovely, and I know that I'm going to want to do more thinking about. Can you invite folks into the mind room, and also, as I said, kick out folks from the mind room? I think it's an interesting idea.
Joanne asks, how are meditation or mindful practices, in quotes or as defined, similar or different to coming into the mind room and calming ourselves in there?
Well, for me, there's lots of intentionality here, things that you're trying to get done. You're doing this for the service of upgrading your personality, getting your creative work done, etc. And so it doesn't feel like the same objectives or goals or intentions of meditation or mindfulness per se. I don't think I have more to say about that. It feels different, and it feels like it's coming from a different place, and it feels like it's a different kind of work. But beyond that, I don't think I have a real distinction to make between the two.
Katie asks, do you have, and I guess this question comes up around positive affirmations and that sort of thing a lot. Do you have any thoughts on toxic positivity that we see in our culture today?
I get the question, but I do think that people do not support themselves well enough and do need to affirm themselves. Certainly not in a ridiculous way or in a way that leads to no action or et cetera, et cetera. But I'm actually for thoughts that serve and affirmations and positivity. So it's hard to make the distinction in a split second between toxic positivity and valuable positivity. But for instance, I've done a book called Affirmations for Artists. I believe in affirmations. I believe in pointing ourselves in the direction we want to go. Let me make a different kind of distinction. In classical therapy, classical psychotherapy, the therapist's goal was that a client gain insight and then do work. In existential psychotherapy, the therapist had a different goal, not insight, but hope. Very different kind of feeling to what an existential psychotherapist was wanting for the client, renewed hope. I think we're running short of hope, and I think we need to affirm our own hopefulness. So I guess if you were to make me come down on the side of, is positivity good or bad, I'm going to go with good.
There's a question about how do you apply this, say in a session. Would you identify one particular issue and then do the visualization that relates to that, or is it sort of a process that you do each time with visualizing the room and setting up all the different components?
It's almost never in session work. This isn't really something that gets done in session. That's a little artificial to introduce that. If something comes up, it may come up and we'll sort of like jokingly quickly install some windows or paint the walls white quickly. But it won't be like to stop and do an exercise or stop and do a visualization, because that isn't my belief about how coaching works. Coaching is a much more in the moment, present kind of thing where we're having a certain experience together that gets a little bit ruined by stopping to do an exercise or what have you. So I would say that, as with many of my books and many of my ideas, it's something that a client may do outside of session, read a book and think about it, but it's not something that happens in session particularly.
Thank you so much. So we've arrived at time. So I just want to, first of all, thank you so much for sharing these great insights and practices. And I want to remind everyone, you can get Eric Maisel's new book, Redesign Your Mind, at Banyan.com. And in fact, we have a ton of his books at Banyan. And you can find out more about his work at ericmaisel.com. So on behalf of Banyan, really thank you very much. And thank you for everyone for coming. Any final words for us?
No, just I hope you'll enjoy the book. Also the companion book, Power of Daily Practice. I think together they make for some good work.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us for Branches of Wisdom, a podcast of Banyan Books and Sound. Canada's spiritual and healing resource since 1970. Our podcast producer is Jacob Steele. The show is edited by Abdo Habani. Watch all our conversations on YouTube by searching for Banyan Books, or listen on your favorite podcast platform. Please subscribe, follow, like, and leave your reviews and comments. We love to hear from you. For all our live events, books, and more, visit us at banyan.com.